L'kuta Sichas Chelek Chaf Aleph, the Sicha for Parshas Pekudei, Lili Nishmis Rabbi Yosef ben Yamin ben Rabbi Nasha Kaltman. Today we're going to learn a three-way machlokes in the Zohar, and we're going to explain how really it's not a machlokes, but all three perspectives are true in their own right, in their own time. In Zohar b'Parshasenu state the Zohar on our Parsha, Parshas Pekudei, it says as follows: As when the Aron is yikumen l'mekoymei, when the Aron was put in its rightful place, after Evan Shasiya, on the foundation rock, which we actually learned about a few weeks ago, that was the place in the Kodesh HaKadoshim where the Aron was placed. Pasach Arein v'Amar, the Aron began to say, Zeis menuchasi adei ad, this is my resting place for eternity. Poyeshev ki ivisiya, this is where I will dwell because I desired it so. Rabbi Yesa Amar, Rabbi Yesa comes and says, Hai kra knesses Yisrael amrale, not like the first opinion that this pasuk was said by the Aron. Rabbi Yesa says this pasuk was said by the Yidden. When b'shaita de'izbini be'migdasha, when the Beis HaMikdash was built, the O'al Areinu la'asrei, and the Aron was entered into its place. So seemingly the timing is the same. The question is, who said it? The first opinion says that the Aron said it, Pasach Areinu v'Amar. Rabbi Yesa says that the Yidden said it. Rabbi Chizkiya Amar, Rabbi Chizkiya is a third opinion, and he says, Kudsha brichu Amar le'al Knesses Yisrael. This pasuk is said by the Eibishter about Eden. Kad Yisrael avdin reusei, when Eden too in the Meratzah von Eibishter, when Eden fulfill the will of Hashem, Hashem says about the Yidden, this is my menucha, this is my resting place. And the Zohar continues, the Hakidain Kutchabrichu Yasiv al Kurse Yakare, because the Eibishter is sitting on his throne of glory, v'chayis al alma, and has compassion on the world, ubracha v'shalom v'chavivusa dekela ishtakach, and then there's blessing and peace and preciousness, love that is present. Uchedein abar, when that happens, the Eibishter says, Zeis menuchasi yad yad, this is my resting place. We learn the Pashtus. To learn it on a basic, superficial level, you have three opinions, but really there's two categories. The first two deis follow the order of follow the meaning of the psukim, which even though this pasuk is from Tehillim, but it's explained that this pasuk is referring to the Perek in Melachim, Aleph, Kapitel Ches, where he talks about bringing the Aron into the Beis HaMikdash that was built by Shlomo HaMelech. The Psukim speak about the time when the Aron was brought to its place. So both the first and the second opinion are talking about this. It's just the difference would be that according to the first opinion, the Aron said the pasuk Zeis Menuchasi, and according to Rabbi Yesa, it was said by the Yidden. But they're both talking about this specific time when the Aron was brought into the Kodesh HaKadoshim. Whereas, according to the third opinion, we're not talking about what the Psukim are talking about. When the Aron is yikumen l'mekoymei in Kodesh HaKadoshim, when the Aron was brought to its place in the Kodesh HaKadoshim, it's a more of a general situation that when the Eibishter sees that Yidden are doing the will of Hashem, this brings the Eibishter bracha v'shalom v'chavivusa, blessing and peace and love or preciousness, whatever it might be, and therefore the Eibishter says Zeis menuchasi yad yad. But this is difficult to understand. If the third opinion has no connection in the way they learn this pasuk to the Mishkan, to the Mikdash, to bringing in the Aron, which is what the Zohar is talking about, then this third explanation should not have been mentioned by the Zohar here. Other pirushim, other meanings, other explanations to this pasuk, there are certainly many more. This Zohar is talking specifically about these psukim, which talk about the Aron being brought into the Kodesh HaKodashim. If the third pirush is not related to that, then why does the Zohar bring it? And then we have another problem, another question. When again the erste zwei Deis is moving as a Chelek is nicht nur wer es hat es gesagt. Zeist nachas yad yad. So we just explained that the first two opinions are pretty much agreeable on everything. The only difference is who said Zeist nachasi. The truth is that Rabbi is going to say here that it's not so simple. We can't say that the only difference is who said Zeist nachasi yad yad. As evident from the fact, but in Zohar state that before this, right before this passage from the Zohar that we just brought, in the beginning of the passage, the Zohar says like this: the beauty of the world and the vision of the world couldn't be seen until the Mishkan was built and erected. And then the Aron was brought into the Kodesh HaKodashim of the Mishkan. From that point on, is Chazu Chizu de Kaila Ba'alma. The vision of everything was seen in the world, which some of the Mefarshim and the Zohar say it means the vision of the Eibishter. The Iskin Alma, and the world was rectified. The Azli Bahu Mishkinu Bahu Arena, and then it went into the Mishkan and into the Aron. And then later on it reached the point which is the beautiful scenery, the joy of everything, which is referring to the Dermakim from Even HaShasiyah. Even the Matila Hasam, when it arrived there, Kedein Pasach Harein, that's when the Aron began to say Zeis Menuchasi Yad Yad. So the Zohar, the first opinion in the Zohar is giving us a much bigger introduction, that there was a time that nothing could be seen. And then the Mishkan was built, and the Aron was brought into the Mishkan. This is before the Even HaShasiyah. And this already brought the rectification of the world, and it brought the ability to see Shfiru Da'alma, the beauty of the world, the vision of the world. And then it was brought to the Even HaShasiyah, which is Yefei Noif, the beautiful scenery, Chedva de Kaila, which is the joy of everything. And then the Aron said, Zeis Benuchasi. Now, Oib Rabbi Yesa kommt sagen, dass nicht der Aron hat das gesagt, der Knesset Yisrael, if the only point of disagreement between Rabbi Yesa and the previous opinion is who said it, he could have just added, this pasuk was said by Knesset Yisrael. From them was it is koifel. B'shaita the izbini be'mikdash of all arena last day. From the fact that the Aron, Rabbi Yesa repeats that this is what at the time that the Beis Hamikdash was built and the Aron was brought into it after we already said all of this, after all of this was already said previously and more, before Pasach Arena, is moving as Meis of Nachal and Yebazeh. This tells us that Rabbi Yesa is adding something. That according to Rabbi Yesa, it's not just connected to the time of the Aron being brought in, even though he mentions the words Al Arena Lasrei, but he also says B'shaita the Izbini Be'mikdasha, in the time when the Beis Mikdash was built, implying that in addition to the fact that according to the first opinion this is Aron related, it's when the Aron was brought in and the Aron said it. Rabbi Yesa is talking about the Yidden said it, but something that has to do with the time of the building of the Beis Hamikdash. Das heißt, so now, unlike the way we presented this at the beginning, that according to the first two opinions, the only disagreement is who said it, who said the word Zeis Benuchasi, it seems different. Das heißt, der Chiluk von die drei Deis ist sei, wer es hat es gesagt, Zeis Benuchasi yad yad. So the difference between these three opinions is, number one, who said it, whether it was the Aron, Knesset Yisrael, or the Kutsha Brichu. Und sei avos das ist gesagt geworden. They also argue about what this pasuk was said. Either it was af mekoymoi, kodesh HaKodashim of the Even HaShasiyah, on the very specific place of the Aron, which is on the Even HaShasiyah in the Kodesh HaKodashim. or Zman Beis Hamikdash, the time of the Beis Hamikdash in general, not just the Aron and the Kodesh HaKodashim, or there's Zman Yisrael Avdin Reusei, or is it the time when you didn't do the will of Hashem? So this machlekes is who said the pasuk and when or about what is this pasuk said. But according to this, we have to understand. What really is the difference between the two opinions, the first two opinions? They're both talking at the same time. One might be focusing on the Zman Beis Hamikdash, the other is focusing on the Aron, but it's happening at the same time. The time that the Beis Hamikdash is being built in Yerushalayim, and the Aron is being brought into the Kodesh. So what really is the difference whether the Aron said it or the Yidden said it? Like what's the background of their argument? Why does the Zohar bring the introduction that we mentioned about the Mishkan, that when the Mishkan was brought into the Kodesh, when the Aron was brought into the Kodesh, into the Holy of Holies of the Mishkan, that was a time that rectified the world. Because even there, this pasuk that we're discussing is actually referring to the time when the Aron arrives to Yerushalayim, to the Kodesh HaKodashim, to its place on the Even HaShasiyah. So why is the Mishkan relevant here? So those are our two questions. Number one, what really is the machlekes between the first two opinions with regards to who said it? Why does it really matter? And number two, why is there a whole introduction about the Mishkan if the pasuk Zeis Menachasi is referring to the Beis Hamikdash? Of course, the Rebbe very often does in the Kutasichis. The Rebbe asks questions, but in the questions lie the answers. We're going to see that we're going to explain what the difference is between the first two opinions, and we're going to see that the Mishkan actually plays a major role in understanding these three opinions. Let's go into Seif Beis. In Seif Beis, the Rebbe is going to explain the machlokes, the three different opinions, how they are so different one from another, and what each one is coming to teach us. Vehabir. The chilek zwischen the drei Deis is, was is der Iker ha'inyan Mishkan HaMikdash? The argument really is not so much who said what, but where they're coming from is, what is the primary element of, whether it's the Mishkan or the Mikdash. At this point, we're not going into Mishkan versus Mikdash, but in the Beis HaMishkan and Mikdash, Beis HaMikdash and Mishkan, what is the primary element of the Mishkan and Mikdash? The first opinion is following the approach of the Ramban. That the most important aspect of the Mishkan, the most desirable thing in the Mishkan, is a place for the Shechina to dwell, which is symbolized or emphasized in the Aron specifically. Und der Rebbe halt die Idee als Pasach Arena v'Amar Zeis Menachasi Adiyad, wenn is angekommen und bekäme Bekedes HaKodashim. Therefore, this opinion holds that the Aron said these words, Zeis Menachasi Adiyad, because the most important part of the Mishkan Mikdash is the Aron that represents the dwelling of Hashem, the Menucha of Hashem, of the Shechina in the Beis HaMikdash. So therefore, it says Pasach Arena v'Amar. The Aron is the most important aspect of the Beis HaMikdash. Das Rabbi Yesa is the Ikar from Mishkan Mikdash as Eden. So haben am Makam Kavod to the Rebbe according to Rabbi Yesa, the most important part of the Mishkan Mikdash is that the Yidden should have a designated permanent space where they could serve Hashem. Beloshna Rambam, this opinion follows the Shita of the Rambam, which we've discussed a number of times in the Kutasichis, this machlekes of Rambam and Ramban over what is the primary purpose of the Beis HaMikdash. The Rambam says, Bayis muchan liyes makrivim bay, a structure that is prepared to be able to bring karbanis in it, makrivim bay karbanis, v'chogigin elo shalos pa'am b'shana, and to celebrate 3 times a year. Was der Indian hat sich aufgetan beikir bescheite, die is bene beimikdash v'al in elasrei. When you have the Beis HaMikdash and the Aron was brought in, but the whole concept of the Beis HaMikdash is a place where the karbanis could be brought, where the Yidden, the Bayis Muchan, a ready space for the Yidden. When the Yidden had a Beis HaMikdash in which to serve Hashem, when the fathers Knesset Yisrael Amra, therefore according to this opinion, the opinion of Rabbi Yesa, Knesset Yisrael, the Yidden said this pasuk because the most important aspect of the Beis HaMikdash was that it was for the Yidden to be able to serve Hashem. But that's the Pechizkiya, is the Ikar Inyan from Mishkan Mikdash v'Shechanti b'Seichem. According to the Bechia, the most important aspect of the Beis HaMikdash is that I should dwell, Hashem should dwell amongst them. Die Menucha von dem Eibishten ist verbunden, der Mitvas der Shechen sufficient in Eden. We said the first day was also the Menucha for the Shechina, but that was referring to that the Shechina should have a place to rest, which is in the Aron. The third opinion, that of Rabbi Chizkiya, is saying, and the most important aspect is v'shachanti b'seicham, v'asu li migdash, v'shachanti b'seicham, that the Eibusha should have a dwelling space within the Yidden. When the Rebbe learned that, and therefore he learns that the Eibusha said it about Yidden, because the most important aspect of the Beis HaMikdash is the fact that the Eibusha should be able to dwell amongst the Yidden. So to go through our three questions already at this point, the first question was, why does the Zohar bring the opinion of Rabbi Chizkiya if it's not about the Aron and about the Beit HaMikdash? The answer is, it is about the Aron and the Beit HaMikdash. When it says that the Eibush said about Yidden, it doesn't mean at any random time. He means specifically about the Beis HaMikdash, but he's focusing on the fact that the purpose of the Beis HaMikdash is that the Eibush should dwell amongst Yidden. Then we ask, what's the difference between the first two opinions? So the answer is very simple. The first opinion is talking about the Menucha, the Menucha of the Shechina, which is in the Aron. The second, that is the most important aspect of the Beis HaMikdash. The second opinion says the most important aspect of the Beis HaMikdash is that Yidden should have a place to serve Hashem. And the reason why it mentions the Mishkan according to this Seif is because this whole argument applies to the Mishkan as well. The Mishkan had the Aron, the Mishkan had a bayis muchan. Maybe it wasn't a bayis, but it was a place that you're able to bring karbanis, etc. And the Mishkan had v'shachanti b'seicham. So it's not uniquely about the Beis HaMikdash, even though it was said when the Aron was brought into the Beis HaMikdash, but this three-way machlokes applies to the Mishkan and the Mikdash. Okay, so this really answers all of the questions and explains the machlokes in the Zohar. The only problem we have with this is that it's a machlokes. And the Rebbe is going to say that especially in the Zohar, there's no need for machlokes. It could be, everyone could be in agreement. And from this point on, the Rebbe is going to explain how the three opinions in the Zohar are not arguing with one another. They're actually complementing one another. And they're all teaching something unique. Since we know that even in the Gemara, when you have multiple opinions, they're all the words of Hashem, meaning to say they all have truth to them. And in our case, in our case, where these opinions are brought in the Zohar was last time on which, as the Zohar says, that when you learn Nigla, when you learn Nister, when you learn the secrets of the Torah, the esoteric parts of Torah, there's no arguments, there's no questions, everything is very clear. We must say that each person is presenting their own opinion, but they're not arguing. Not only are they all true and they all exist in the Beis HaMikdash, all three approaches, the Shechina, the Menucha of the Shechina and the Aron, the place to be Makav Karbanis, and the V'shachanti B'seicham are all there. But they are all there as a primary element of the Mishkan. How could they all be primary? It's just that the three opinions are talking about three different time periods, as we're going to explain further on in the Sikha, and therefore they're not arguing, they're just talking about different times. Gimel, we're going to start talking about this. What are these three tkufos, these three bazunder zmanim in the Beis HaMikdash? In the idea of the Beis HaMikdash, including the Mishkan, there are primarily three time periods, and because of that, three different levels or phases. Number one, you have HaMishkan. You have the Mishkan, which was in the Midbar, and in the Ha'ara, the Rebbe says this includes the Mishkan Chelek. Then you have number two, Beis HaMikdash Yerushalayim, Beis HaMikdash as it stood in Yerushalayim, Ha'alev, Ha'beis, both the first and second Beis HaMikdash as they were in Yerushalayim. And then you have the third era, Beis HaMikdash Delas, the Beis HaMikdash of the future, the third Beis HaMikdash. Now, before we get to what those three periods represent, and see if Dalid, the Rebbe is going to say that all these three aspects are actually alluded to in the very first pasuk of this week's parsha. As it is explained and alluded to in the words of Chazal on the beginning of our parsha. Also brought in Rashi, the pasuk says, Eile Pekudei HaMishkan, Mishkan Ha'edus. These are the numbers of the Mishkan of testimony. So the Rashi brings from Chazal, HaMishkan, Mishkan Shnei Pa'amim. It says the word Mishkan 2 times. Remez leMikdash shenismashken b'shnei churbanin. This is a remez, this is an allusion to the Beis HaMikdash, which was taken as collateral in two destructions. In other words, the Eibishter gave us a Mishkan, and then there was a Beis HaMikdash, but then it was taken back from us 2 times, which means it was taken as collateral from us until we rectify our ways, until we repair the world, whatever it is, until the time of the Geula. So kumtois. So if this pasuk is alluding to the not just the Mishkan, but also the Beis HaMikdash, kumtois, as the pasuk that this pasuk is talking over here of Aleph, a Mishkan. First of all, on the most simple, basic level, we're talking about the Mishkan, Pekudei Mishkan, Ha-Mishkan, which is the Mishkan that was in the Midbar. Then Beis beremez wegen der Mishkan shenis mashkin. By saying Mishkan, it is alluding to the Beis HaMikdash that was taken as collateral. Ubemele gimelech wegen der Beis HaMikdash lasit, which automatically means that it's also talking about the third Beis HaMikdash. How? I see Mishkan, and I see Mishkan shenis mashkin. But how do I see the third Beis HaMikdash? So the Rebbe explains, when the Balder Pasuk is Meramez Mechurban HaMikdash mit Lashon Mishkan Shenis Mashkin, since the way he's alluding to the destruction is with the word Mishkan Shenis Mashkin, which means taken as collateral, doesn't say which was destroyed, or it doesn't say which was taken from us, it says which was taken as a mashkin. Is move on as churbanin, that when he says destruction is neat as Beis HaMikdash rishon v'sheni, but the pasuk is a dakel l'mramis ke'echad. Remez leMikdash shenis mashkim b'shnei churbanin vet chas v'shalom batel verin. He's not just implying that the Beis HaMikdash, which is being said over here in the single term, is going to be destroyed. No, this is an anifim from a mashkin. He's saying that, talking about a destruction that is being done as a collateral. What is that? A mashkin geht heraus von der Schusslewe. The mashkin is taken from the possession of the borrower, und gefindt sich bei Malvet zeitweilig, and is given to the lender temporarily. Und so wird umgekehrt zum Lewe. But then, when the borrower pays up his loan, the lender gives back the collateral to the borrower, to the original owner. As the Mikdash Rishon V'Sheni wird nur nismashkim b'shnei churbanin. The Beis HaMikdash that was destroyed was only taken as collateral. Und nachdem wird umgekehrt zum Eden, but then it's going to be returned to the Eden. The Beis HaMikdash Gimel the La'asid by the third Beis HaMikdash when Mashiach comes. So the very fact that he uses the word mashkin, collateral, to talk about, to indicate the churban, is also telling us that the churban is going to be given back to us, which is the third Beis HaMikdash. So in this one pasuk, it mentions the Mishkan. It alludes to the Beis HaMikdash that was destroyed, and it alludes to the Beis HaMikdash that will be given back to us when Mashiach comes. Okay, so now we understand that there are three tkufos, 3 zmanim: Mishkan, Beis HaMikdash 1 and 2, and Beis HaMikdash HaShlishi. The chiluk from the drei in Yanim Mishkan Mikdash and Mikdash the last. Now let's explain what's the difference between these 3 ideas and these 3 times. In Mishkan what was accomplished in the Mishkan? A place where the Shechina could dwell, which was as free nit given, which previously did not exist. A physical space in this world where the Eibishter could dwell and rest, which this is represented in the Aron. Nochmer, even a step further, that in an kavua, the fact that the Aron was able to rest in a permanent manner is going to ikir Mishkan. That took place primarily in the Mishkan. Where the Aron was able to be in the same place the entire time that the Mishkan stood, even though it was dismantled whenever they traveled. But whenever the Mishkan was standing, the Aron was in its place from the beginning to the end. Whereas, if you were to look at the Batei Mikdash in Yerushalayim, in Mikdash is the Aron Mechadchil Nit Given. Second Beis Mikdash did not have the Aron at all. When in Mikdash Rishon is the Aron Nit Given, Kol Zman Shoya Kayim. The Mikdash wasn't there. The Aron wasn't there the entire time of this when the first Beis Mikdash stood. Because towards the end of the era of the first Beis Hamikdash, Yeshayahu concealed the Aron, as we learned in the Tzicha in Parshas Teruma at length, exactly what happened and how it happened. So the Aron didn't even make it through the entire first Beis Hamikdash. So the only place where the Aron had a total and complete rest, a permanent space, was in the time of the Mishkan. Das has been a Gedem Aron. However, this only refers to the Aron that was in the Mishkan. But if you're going to talk about the general Mishkan itself, is Adrabah. The Mishkan was transported from place to place, and it's referred to as a tent. It's referred to as a tent, which is something that is transient. It did not. The Mishkan itself did not have this sense of tranquility and permanence. So the first tkufa, the first zman that we talk about, is the zman where the Shechina rests in the Aron, where the Aron has a kvius, a sense of permanence, and therefore a sense of tranquility. But at the very same time, the Mishkan itself does not have that sense of permanence. It is a mobile, movable Mishkan. When you talk about the second era, the era of the Batei Mikdash, their building was permanent in one place throughout, from beginning to end. So you have in the first kufa, the Aron was kavua, but the binyan was not. The building was not. In the second era, the binyan is kavua, but the Beis Batei Mikdash aber seine nicht given binyanim nitzchim. They weren't eternal buildings. They were taken from the Yidden. Even though the space, the Harabayis, the space where the Beis Hamikdash remained holy, but the building is not there anymore. The building was kavua while it was there, but it was not nitzchi. It was permanent, but it wasn't eternal. And then the third Beis Hamikdash, not only will the binyan be kavua, but the binyan itself will be nitzchi, and it is an eternal building, as we discussed many times. That because it's mikdash adnai keinu yodecha, because it is built by Hashem, therefore it is eternal. So those are the differences. The first tkufa, the first time period, is where the Aron has a sense of permanence, and where the Shechina rests in the Aron. The second period is where the buildings of the first and second Beis Hamikdash have a sense of permanence, although it's not eternal. And the third tkufa is the eternity of the third Beis Hamikdash. Now we can explain the three opinions in the Zohar. The first opinion that says that the Aron said it. This comes as a continuation to the fact that the Mishkan was built and the Aron was brought into the Kodesh of the Mishkan. We asked earlier, why does the Zohar mention the Mishkan? Because the first opinion is referring to the era of the Mishkan. Because this element of the Aron, this element of the Mishkan, which is about the Aron, that the Aron was able to contain the dwelling of Hashem, this took place primarily in the Mishkan. Aber das ist nicht kein Menucha b'shaychus zum Bayis Mishkan Gufa, but there was no Menucha with regards to the structure of the Mishkan itself. Und der Rebbe has been a Eden zu was fahren Ort zu Bayis ze seinen gekommen, sagt wenn kele Basim geimer ela Menucha valanach, and therefore the Eden, we were told, you have not yet come to your resting place, to your eternal inheritance, because the Mishkan was constantly moving. So this first day it says Pasach Arayna, because the Aron was the sense of permanence at that time. Zois Menuchasi. This is even though it wasn't said yet, it was said later, but when it's said, it refers to the era of the Mishkan, because the Aron was the sense of permanence in the Mishkan. In the zweite day in Zayar is der Meduber wegen dem Bisman HaMikdash. The second opinion is focusing on the time of the Beis HaMikdash in Yerushalayim. As Rabbi Yesa says, B'shaita de Izbini Bei Mikdash, in the time when the Beis HaMikdash was built, V'yah Alarin last day. But then what is Gevarin, der Makim Ubinyan Kavua for Hazrat Shechina, because then there was a place, a permanent structure for the dwelling of the Shechina. And therefore Eden did come at that point to their resting place, to their inheritance. Amakim Kavua Mucham for Aveda, a permanent place that was ready for the service of Hashem. As the Rambam says, Kivan Shenivna HaMikdash b'Yerushalayim, once the Beis HaMikdash was built in Yerushalayim, Nesru Kol HaMakim Kulan living his Ben Bayis LaHashem, all other places became prohibited to use them as a place to build a house for Hashem. The ancient Bayis LaDeiri Aderes of the Yerushalayim Bilvad Ubahar HaMiriah, and there's no permanent structure for the generations to come, other than in Yerushalayim and in Yerushalayim itself on Har HaMoriah. Sheba Nemar Vayemer David Uchulu V'Zem Mizbeach La'Ola L'Yisrael V'Omer Zeish Menuchasi Yad Yad, about which David Melech said, this will be the place to make a Mizbeach for an Oila for the Yidden. Again, the emphasis here Yidden, because this opinion is focusing on the Yidden. V'Omer Zeish Menuchasi, and he brings the pasuk Zeish Menuchasi in the Rambam, saying that once the Beis HaMikdash was built in Yerushalayim and the Yidden had a permanent place where they could serve Hashem, therefore then they said Zeis Menuchasi, and therefore it's talking about he says Knesset Yisrael Amar, the Yidden said it, because it's about the Beis HaMikdash in general, and it's about what it accomplished for the Yidden. In the dritte day, un Shleimus the Beis HaMikdash wegen Beis HaMikdash. The third opinion is talking about, or at least alluding to, the third Beis HaMikdash. In dem Zman, when the Yidden will ausfinden, bestimmt dem Ratzen und Kavanah von dem Eibishten, a time when the Yidden will have completed the will of Hashem. Kad Yisrael Avdin Reusei B'Shleimus, when Yidden are doing His will in a complete manner. That der Bayis ein Bayis Nitzchi, then the Beis HaMikdash will be an eternal building. Wird kemol nicht zugenommen werden von Yidden, it will never be taken away from the Yidden. Und demot sagt Kutchabrichu al Knesset Yisrael Zeis Menuchasi Yad Yad. And therefore, according to this opinion, the Eibishter says this pasuk about Yidden, but the Hashraf von dem Eibishter zwischen Yidden is in a Nefen from Menuchasi Yad Yad, because the way the Eibishter dwells in amongst the Yidden is in a manner of something that is eternal in a revealed way. So, according to this, there is no machloikis. It's just, they're talking about three different times. The first opinion is talking about the beginning, when the Mishkan was built, where the focus was the Aron that held the Beis HaMikdash, that held the Shechina, and that the Aron was the most kavua aspect of everything. Therefore, the Aron is the focus. Pasach Aron of Amar Zeis Menuchasi. The second opinion is talking about the next time period, the two Batei Mikdashos in Yerushalayim, where there was a permanent space for the Yidden to serve Hashem, and therefore Knesset Yisrael said it. B'shaita de Izbini Bei Mikdasha. It's about the Beis HaMikdash as much as it is about the Aron. As much as it is about the Aron, and then the third opinion is we're focusing on a time when the Yidden will have completed the Ratzon of Hashem, and the Shechina will come down and dwell amongst the Yidden permanently and forever, and therefore he says, the Eibush says it about the Yidden. In Sivav, the Rebbe is going to give us another perspective on these three opinions, not so much as three time periods, but as three different elements in our avodah, in us serving Hashem. This has been again the Mishkan Beis HaMikdash Aleph Beis und Bayis Shlishi. Does I need came as under in Yanim. Just like we just set up until here about the Mishkan Beis HaMikdash and the third Beis HaMikdash, that it's not three separate elements, but it's one continuous thing. The mitzvah lashon yachid from Vasili Mikdash, the one single mitzvah of making for Hashem a sanctuary, a dwelling place. Die Mitzvah von Avos Mikdash hat sich angeben, in Mekayim given in a Mishkan. Mamshach given in Beis Mikdash Alava Beis. This mitzvah started with the Mishkan, then it was continued through the building of the Beis HaMikdash. Ubishlei Musach mitzvah that's in Nechav at the Zayin Bebinyan Bayis Shlishi B'Meidav Meinu Amen. And then the ultimate completion of it, the ultimate fulfillment of it, as the Eibishter wants, will be done in the third Beis HaMikdash. Al derech zeh das bin ich beneged die Pratim was in Madgish and Zayar, but also the details that are emphasized in the Zayar. Die Menucha b'shaychas zum Aron Beis HaMikdash. The resting of Hashem, or the resting of these things, the Aron, the Beis HaMikdash, Yidden. And the Eibishter, and das nicht came as under the Sachen in Hemshech, also, we're going to explain now that they are not seen as 4 different elements or 3 different elements, but it's one continuous thing that is all part of our Avodah. It's just 3 different elements within our Avodah. But before we can do that, we're first going to point out a question in the wording of the third opinion. Was is Aleph Meinich da Kedein Yosef al Kursei Yikarik. V'chayis al Alma, that the Eibushter is sitting on his throne of glory and has compassion on the world. Ubracha v'sholim v'chavivusa dekei leishtakach, and now there is blessing and peace and preciousness of everything, referring to everything, the way that Rebbe is learning it, everything in the world is ishtakach, is present. So what is this? What is this? Long-winded word, phrasing telling us? Why is this whole thing relevant? First of all, we're asking why are we going? Why are we elaborating? The second question is, why is this whole thing relevant here? We're not talking about the world. We're talking about Yidden. The Eibishter is saying Zeis Nuchasi an Yidden. So why is V'chayis al Alma, V'chavusa de Kula or de Kaila? Why is that relevant here? So first of all, why is it said at length, and why is it relevant at all? The beer basa. Here's the beer. We're going to answer this question, but the question, but at the same time, we're going to answer what are these? What is the avodah of Aron, Beis Hamikdash, etc., and how does it all complement one another? The Pasach Arena of Amar Zeis Nechasi Adayad. The Zohar begins and says that the Aron opens up and says Zeis Nechasi Adayad is the avodah from Torah. This is refers to the avodah of learning Torah. Can move on, obviously. That's the Kalin Yishal Aron. The whole idea of the Aron, Ein Ba'aron Nachshnei Luchos Avanim. The Aron contains the Luchos, which is Torah. And the Shleimus from Torah is, when can you truly reach the completion of Torah? When a person learns Torah in a manner of peace, when there's nothing disturbing or distracting, Chazal tell us the Torah was not given to be expounded upon other than to those who eat the man. What's the connection? We get feel as we've explained in the past, as in order to understand and internalize Torah properly, you have to be free from any distractions, any disturbances, as those who were eating the man had, that they had no financial worries, and therefore they could focus totally on learning Torah. So the Aron represents Torah, and the way to learn Torah is Zeis Menuchasi, is to learn Torah in a way of tranquility, of peace. That's the first avodah. Now let's go to the second step. When a person learns Torah properly, the greatness of learning is that it can lead to action. The Torah is drawn down into the action of doing mitzvahs and helps that the mitzvahs should be done properly. Which this accomplishes the refinement of the world. Which is expressed in the fact that a Beis Hamikdash is built. A permanent building, a permanent structure is being built for Hashem. And therefore, you have the second level. The first Aron is Torah. Beis Hamikdash represent mitzvahs. Mitzvahs is the Bir HaOlam, and Bir HaOlam is represented in the fact that there is a place in this world where Hashem could dwell. We must point out, however, in them is da koyach upeulas umetzias haTorah, that we can't divorce Torah from mitzvahs, even when we bring mitzvahs into this world and we refine the world and we build a Beis Hamikdash for Hashem. It has to be with the koyach, the strength of, peulas, the impact of, and mitzias, the existence of Torah. As the Zohar says, the Oal Arena Lasrei. The Yidden said this according to Rabbi Yesa when the Beis Hamikdash was built and the Aron was brought into it, which means that even in Ma'isa mitzvahs there has to be the impact of Torah. But this is the second. But this is the The point here is that through the Torah, it comes to mitzvahs, it comes to bir ha'olam. When you reach that point that you could build a Beis Hamikdash where you're making a dwelling place for Hashem in this world, then the Yidden say, this is my dwelling place, as because the Yidden could reach their point of completion, because they have fulfilled their purpose. Because they have fulfilled their purpose. I was created to serve my master, which is the fulfillment of the Eibishter's will through learning Torah and doing mitzvahs. So Aaron represents Torah, the Beis Hamikdash represents mitzvahs, and creating a place for Hashem to dwell in this world. And now we come to the third level. And when Yidden do His will, is Kuchabrichu Amarle al Knesset Yisrael. Then the Eibishter says about Yidden Zeis Menuchasi Adiyad, as Verd Kiviyochel the Shleimus from Kuchabrichu, we reach as so to speak, the completion of Hashem. Because Yidden are one with Hashem, and when Yidden reach their completion, this causes Hashem should reach His completion in a manner of speaking. Did I have them? If you remember, we asked previously, why does the Zohar elaborate on the Eibishter sitting on His throne of glory and compassion on the world and bringing mibracha v'shalom to the world? That's the raya that we're talking about, that we're reaching the shleimus of Hashem. The raya of the muvud liegt sich das Zois, sagt der Zohar. Where do we see the shleimus of Hashem? So he explains. The Eibishter is sitting on His throne of glory. And He has mercy on the world, compassion on the world. And now there's blessing and peace and love. When the existence of the world does not disturb or distract the Yid from his Aveda. The world, even the physicality of the world, is in a way of blessing and peace. A place that is ready, masim, befitting, umisayeya, and assisting to the Ranhagah von Yidden, to the conduct of the Yidden. Kedain, Amar Zeis Menuchasi, then the Eibishter says Zeis Menuchasi. Then will be Nizgalas, Knesset Yisrael, and Namachal Shifta Yisbarach, because then it becomes revealed that the Yidden are a dwelling place for the Eibishter to dwell in. As Firtzich Uis, the Pnimiyas HaKavana Va'in, von Direle Yisbarach, Ladur V'lishkin, B'nishamas Yisrael Lamata. The goal, the purpose of creation is fulfilled, not just that the Eibishter should dwell in this world, which is through mitzvahs, and like in the Beis Hamikdash, but that the Eibishter should dwell bin nishamas Yisrael, in the Yidden, and therefore, according to this opinion, the Eibishter says Zeis Menuchasi on the Yidden, because that is where the Eibishter is dwelling. That is the shleimus of Kuchabrichu. That is the completion of the Eibishter when He's able to dwell amongst nishamas Yisrael. So, as we said it originally, that there were three tkufas, Mishkan, Beis Hamikdash, Bayis Shlishi. Now we said it that there's Aaron, Beis Hamikdash, Kuchabrichu, and Knesset Yisrael. The three opinions are not arguing with each other. They're just referring to three different elements, either in the chronologically or in the Aveda of Yidden. Al Pisa Dech moving against the Mishkan and the Bati Mikdashes. And then this strengthens this point of the fact that the Mishkan and Beis Hamikdash are one thing. There's one long, continuous idea. It began with the binyan building of the Mishkan. Und es beöffnet, dass die Bati Mikdashes bringen und seinen Geirem dem Inyan und dem Gili and binyan Bayis HaShlishi, and it is in a manner that the Bati Mikdashes bring about and cause the third Beis Hamikdash. That's the chiddush of this Siv Ches. It's not just that the Bati Mikdash were destroyed, and then there's going to be a third Beis Hamikdash through the Aveda of the Yidden, but the Bati Mikdashes themselves, the first and the second, they are the ones that bring about the third Beis Hamikdash. Ukemudgash in Maimer Chazal Anal, Remez the Mikdash in his Mashkin, as it is emphasized in this above mentioned Maimer Chazal, that on the pasuk of Pekudei, that it's a remez to the Beis Hamikdash that was taken as collateral, as the umker von the Mikdash, the return of the Mikdash, is nicht aber so eine Sache für sich, it's not a separate thing. Nor wie bei Mashkin, was der Mechuvon von Nehmen und Halten am Mashkin, is auf zu versichern, dass der Lebe wird abgeben am Chai von Frier, just like by a collateral. The whole purpose of the collateral is to guarantee that the borrower is going to return the loan. Das heißt, der schon ist Maschkin von dem Beis Hamikdash, alle Beis Gufe ist Geidem und versichert, als Eden sollen sich führen in Kedeboy. The fact that the first and second Beis Hamikdash is a Maschkin, this guarantees that the conduct of the Eden should be properly. Und der Rebbe wird zurückkommen, and therefore it's going to be given back. The whole point of the Maschkin is in order to is to get back the collateral, because he wants to get back his loan. So therefore, the fact that the first and second Beis Hamikdash are called a mashkin doesn't just mean that we're going to get it back. It means that the purpose of them is so that we should get it back. And therefore, we see how they're all interconnected. You had a Mishkan, then the Mishkan became permanent in a sense of the Beis Hamikdash in the Yerushalayim, and this Beis Hamikdash in Yerushalayim, even though it was destroyed, is part of the process that causes to bring back the third Beis Hamikdash. In Sif Tes, the Rebbe is going to say that since the very first stage was really the Mishkan, that in a sense, these three stages are actually seen in the Mishkan itself. Since the this commandment, make for me a Migdash, and I will dwell amongst them, which is the mitzvah for eternity, for the generations to come to build a Mishkan and later a Beis Hamikdash. But according to the most simple understanding of the pasuk, is referring to the Mishkan, the tabernacle in the desert, is moving as in the Mishkan. It's understood that in the Mishkan itself, it has three stages similar to these three above mentioned ideas: Mishkan, Mikdash, Bayis Hagimel, the Mishkan, the Beis Hamikdash number 1 and 2, and the third Beis Hamikdash. In our Kamas, when we speak about the erecting of the Mishkan in our Parsha, after all of the Avodah, all of the work that was done leading up to that was completed, in the very erecting of the Mishkan itself, in our Parsha, we find three time periods and three stages. Number one, there's Number one, you have the time when the Mishkan was erected for the 7 days of inauguration, was Chachas Demot hat Menschen aufgestellt the Mishkan reingetragen dem Aron. Even though at that point the Mishkan had been built, the Aron was carried in. Nicht wie früher, wenn es noch kein Mishkan nicht gewesen, not like the time prior to that, when there was no Mishkan at all. Nor blaze die Malachas und Asiyas Tzedach Mishkan hachon ala kamase. Whatever was being done until the Zayim Amiloim was only a preparation to the erecting of the Mishkan. In these 7 days, the Mishkan was erected, the Aron was carried in, but it did not have a sense of permanence. Because for these 7 days, Moshe would erect the Mishkan and then he would dismantle it. But even though they did all of the Aveda, it was not considered Aveda in comparison to what the Koyanim did, starting from after those 7 days, when the Koyanim themselves did the Avodah. So this is our first time period, the time of the 7 days of Miluim, when the Mishkan was built, the Aron was inside, so the Aron had a place, but it was lacking a sense of permanence because Moshe was dismantling the Mishkan on a daily basis. Then you have the second time, the 8th day, on the first day of Chedesh Nisan, when the Mishkan was erected in a more of a permanent sense, then at that point it was erected for the purpose of standing, not for the purpose of taking it back down. And then there was able to be the Avodah in the Mishkan in a permanent way. If we were to look at these two different types of erecting the Mishkan within the Mishkan itself, is given, we could say it's similar to the difference between the Mishkan in general. Which was more of a resting place for the Aron. But the Mishkan itself was more of a temporary dwelling place, like an oil, like a tent. Beis Hamikdash, was is given adidas keva, and then you have the other level, which is the Beis Hamikdash, which was a more permanent dwelling, Israel, a dwelling place not just for the Aron, but for Yidden. So just like you say by the Mishkan and the Mikdash, one was adidas arai, one was adidas keva, one was temporary, one was permanent. In these 8 days, the first 7 days were temporary, and the 8th day was permanent. And then you have this brings to the third level. After the Mishkan was erected on the 8th day, and after some of the Avodah was done, only then was there the dwelling of the Shechina amongst the Yidden. There's Messiah as he says only at the end of the parsha. The honor of Hashem, the glory of Hashem filled the Mishkan. Was demot is given Vayar Kved Vayera Kved Hashem al Kol Ha'am, which then it was that the glory of Hashem was visible to all the people. That happens at the very end. Which this could be compared to the menucha b'beis hamikdash shlishi, to the dwelling of to the dwelling and the resting that will be in the third beis hamikdash. Which the Eibusher says about Yidden. This is my dwelling place. As the Sforno says, the Onen rose from above the Mishkan. So the Sforno says, the dwelling of the Shechina was so permanent in the Mishkan, it would not be removed at all until the Yidden would travel. This level of Shechina did not exist, not in Shiloh, not in the first Beis Hamikdash, not in the second Beis Hamikdash. So we see from over here that there was a concept of keva, of permanence, also in the Mishkan, similar to the third Beis Hamikdash. So in the Mishkan itself, you have a sense of Oren without permanence, which is the first 7 days. You have a sense of permanence, which is the 8th day, and then you have the Ashras Shechina, which comes after that. And this dwelling of the Shechina, also in the Mishkan, like we said about the third Beis Hamikdash, that it's about the Yidden fulfilling the will of Hashem, also in the Mishkan, within the Mishkan itself, this third level was connected with the Yidden doing the will of Hashem, Bishleimus, in a complete way. Because this dwelling of the Shechina that took place amongst the Yidden happened through Aaron completing the karbonos and the avodah that he had to do that day. And then there's the ultimate rest or tranquility of the Mishkan. Mishkan ha'edus, edus liYisrael sheviter l'HaKadosh Baruch Hu al ma'aseh egel. Why is it called the Mishkan of testimony? It was a testimony that the Eibishter forgave them for the act of the golden calf, because he dwelled his Shechina amongst them. This was a sign that Hashem forgave the Yidden for the Ma'aseh Ha'egel. So this is the ultimate menucha of the Mishkan. So in the pasuk Pekudei Mishkan, Mishkan Ha'edus, we see in that itself the aspect of the Mishkan. We see the aspect of that ultimately the purpose of it is that there should be Hashras HaShechina even in the Mishkan, and that shows that the Eibishter forgave the Cheteg. Through learning about the Beis Hamikdash in all the times, the time of the Mishkan, the time of the first Beis Hamikdash, the time of the second Beis Hamikdash, which represents the concept of Torah. So which through learning about it, I will consider it as if they are involved in building the Beis Hamikdash. And this guarantees that the Eibishter's binyan building should not be empty, even though we don't have the building itself, but at least we're learning about the building. So there is the concept of having a Beis Hamikdash. Kabir Chazal, as Chazal explained, which that's the idea of mitzvahs, as we said earlier in the Sikha, that the building of the Beis Hamikdash represents bringing the Eibishter into the world, which is the idea of mitzvahs. So when we have, through learning Torah, this brings about the Aveda of mitzvahs. This brings about and hastens the revelation of the third Beis Hamikdash, which will be revealed and brought down from Shamayim. Then we'll have everything in a sense of completion. Shleimus HaTorah, which is Menuchas HaAron, the completion of the Torah, which is the dwelling place of the Aron. Shleimus Am Yisrael, the completion of Yidden, Menuchas Yisrael, the Yidden will be able to have their dwelling, their peace in the Beis Hamikdash. Hashem Kudsha B'Richu Shalom, and then you'll have the completion of the name of Hashem, as V'Golu Le'Einei Kol Ha'am, it will be revealed in the eyes of all the nations. Thus was Kudsha B'Richu Amalei Al Knesset Yisrael, Zis Nechasi Yad Yad. The fact that the Eibishter says about Yidden, this is my dwelling place, the Eibishter finds his complete dwelling place. May it be speedily in our days.